Let's welcome in our morning guest. Siddharth Sedani is now joining us. SP Prasad is with us and K. Subramaniam is also with us. Okay, Siddharth Sedani will just join us. SP, let's start with you. What are your picks?
Good morning. You always, first thing on Monday morning, what one reads is when you guys put me on the spot. Anyway, I think markets are generally taking a pause, Pankaj, and it was actually long expected. And honestly, markets does not seem to be at all taking into account the Syria factor. It had happened on one day when the markets fell, but market seems to have ignored it. I would frankly look at Bharat Petroleum as well. I've been focusing a lot on HP, but HPCL, but Bharat Petroleum is a name I like, because in these kind of markets are already high. You have the Syria factor that's happened. It's better to stick to the tried and tested. So clearly BPCL is one thing I will clearly look at. SBI is a stock I continue to like. Also, I would like to go against the trend, which I think mentioned in one of the earlier Monday morning sessions as well, is that at every decline, I think it's a great time to look at some of the liquor stocks. Because let's face it, I mean, the fact is, because of consumerism, because of aspiration, demographics, call it whatever, people do drink. And ultimately, the big brands come out a winner. So this opportunity of the Supreme Court order, states trying to do something, etc., is a great opportunity to get in. Somebody can say that you're fishing in troubled waters. Not really. I think it's an opportunity to look at the big ones. No point in looking at the smaller names. So these are some of the ideas that I have for this Monday morning.
Right. You know, you just mentioned about the oil marketing companies. They've done extremely well in the last week or in the last 4 or 5 days. Still, you would be bullish on these names? Yeah,
certainly. I mean, the one caveat is don't expect the kind of run that they have it in the last 3 or 6 months. Especially this news about the fact that they're going to calibrate the prices on a daily basis. So what really happens is that the either a profit or a loss of holding or their stock would not be there now, because you're you're pricing on a daily basis. And with the fact that the whole business of subsidy is coming down steadily on let's say something like LPG. If I'm not mistaken, I think kerosene is the only one that's still subsidized. So therefore, and again, consumerism. I mean, market grows, people are going to buy more vehicles. If they buy more vehicles, they obviously have to fill it up with either petrol or diesel, largely petrol. So that's why I'm fairly bullish. And of course, the auto business as well.
Right. Subra, what will be your calls?
Well, to begin with, buy on Adani Ports. That's seen some stellar run this series already. But last couple of days, seen some soft correction. But could be bought for a possible target of 355. Keep a stop loss of 344. Second one is Karnataka Bank. Now that shows a huge breakout on the long-term charts. And risk reward merits a buy. And I think one could buy this for a possible target of 155. Keep a stop loss of 138. And the third one is a non-F&O item, Tricol. Now this has been languishing for quite some time now, 5-6 months. It had got delisted, now again relisted, but has seen some very serious correction, but could possibly be bought for a possible target of 105. Keep a stop loss of 84.
Right. Again, Adani Ports, the one that you mentioned, don't you think markets are already expecting a lot going into the results? So chances of going down are higher because of the recent run-up?
No, I said I think I'm bullish on Adani Ports. We saw some correction on the last couple of days. So I think closer to levels of 330, 335 should see some good support. So I think one could possibly buy at a decline, and we could see it advancing up to levels of maybe 355.
So buy on decline should be the strategy.
That's right.
Right. Another stock that will be in focus will be L&T. Now, that's a stock which has got some news flow. Siddharth Sedani is also now joining us. Before we focus on L&T, Siddharth, okay, but let's just look at what's happened with L&T. So what's happened post-market hours is that A.M. Nayak, who's of course the face of L&T for so many years now, has stepped down as the executive chairman from September 30th. It was known that his tenure is ending and there will be a succession plan which will be announced. So this doesn't come in as a surprise. It's something which the market knew. Post-October 1, Mr. Nayak would be taking over as non-executive chairman. Now, this is something that the street was not expecting. Not that it changes what is happening, because he would be a non-executive chairman, so he would just be advising rather than taking decisions, which he is doing now. The new change is that Mr. Subramaniam will take over as the chief executive officer. He's currently the deputy MD as well as president of L&T. He has been speaking to us about a lot of order inflows in the last few years. Now he'll be taking over as the charge as the CEO. Now this comes in after Mr. Nayak goes down or steps down. Post that this will happen. So this is the news flow regarding L&T. It's up about 2 to 3 rupees in the pre-open session. Don't really think it's reacting quite a bit. SB, what will be your call? Mr. Nayak had to go one day, and as he's going, he's giving out a statement that I'm confident that under my leadership, the company will accelerate the growth momentum. That's the quote that we can pick up, from the press release. SV, what will be your call on L&T?
Frankly, one is that at long last we are seeing some visibility as far as the sectors which L&T is in. So the environment is as good as any. And secondly, they've got a good pipeline of managers, Pankaj. You're not taking people from outside. These are people who've been with the company, so they know the culture of the company. Excellent managers. So I think it will be a smooth takeover, a smooth handover from Mr. Nayak to Mr. Subramaniam. So I don't see much of an issue as far as a professional company like L&T is concerned. And I think it's a stock definitely worth looking at, given the slow turnaround happening on the infrastructure side and the focus that this government is having in terms of infra spend.
Right. Siddharth, what are your calls for the day?
Well, my first call for the day would be Pidilite Industries. Again, from a adhesive and a sealant side, they are one of the leaders in the adhesive and sealant segment. And they are looking forward to gain market share in the waterproofing and flooring business. Pidilite looks very interesting with a medium-term horizon. As we see monsoon coming up, as we see there is a little bit of a turnaround in the rural side of the economy. I think once the revival comes in place, Pidilite will see some kind of attraction. We expect a revenue of 11.5% for next 2 to 3 years on a CAGR basis. We believe Pidilite Industries has a lot of potential, and crude hovering at these levels as being a crude derivative product, I think it stands a good bet from now. The second idea would be Kirloskar Brothers. Again, Kirloskar Brothers is a turnaround story, was putting up losses for the last 2-3 years on the back of provisioning of some of the projects which they had taken up in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So Kirloskar Brothers looks very interesting. We believe that it has a better cash flow from here on. It is one of the leaders in pumps and valve segment. So as a rural theme also, Kirloskar Brothers looks very interesting with a target of 357.
Right. Siddharth, in terms of large cap names, what will be your expectation from Infosys? They declare numbers this week.
Well, I think the numbers should be a little muted, a little subdued in nature. Amongst the large cap, although we don't cover any of the large cap stories in IT, but a consensus is building up that amongst large cap, HCL Tech is one of the company which can beat the estimates and beat the consensus estimate.
All right. There are a few stocks that we'll be watching because they have news flow attached to them. There is Colgate that is going ex-dividend, giving a dividend of 3 rupees a share. Then NIT is in focus. Its CEO, Rahul Patwardhan, has tendered his resignation. He has requested to be relieved from July 31st, 2017. And the appointment of Sapnesh Lalla as the CEO has been approved. Then we have Shobha. Promoter S. Menon has cut his stake to 37.7% from 41.9%. Promoter S. Menon sold 40 lakh shares in the open market. We've seen a big rally coming in for the stock price of Shobha. Then we have Apollo Tyres. It has commenced production at its Hungary facility. It has invested about 475 million euros in this facility. We have Madhukon Projects. It's got a road building order in Maharashtra. And Bhushal Steel has submitted its proposal to restructure bad loans. Cosmos Films is setting up a new line for specialized polyester film. So that will also be in focus.
Anisha, pharma as a sector will also be in focus, and we've got some news flow regarding approvals regarding US FDA. Let's start with Divi's Lab. Over the weekend, they've given a press release. Remember, their Vizag facility is under the import alert that came in the second week of March, and since then, the stock has been a big underperformer. Now, the management has said that US FDA has exempt 2 additional products, 2 additional API that the company makes from this Vizag facility. These 2 products are quite significant as far as their sales is concerned. Of course, they don't give product-wise sale from any facility facility, but it seems to be slightly higher. Now, earlier when the management had given out a release regarding import alert, they stated that 10 products had already been exempted, and now these two also, so total of 12 products. Visakhapatnam or Vizag facility is under the import alert status. Of course, the company has taken corrective measures, but it comes in as a positive news. This is the pre-open price. It's indicating a 5% sort of a higher start, 656 for DV's lab. Lupin has gone ahead and won an approval for a hypertension disorder, hypertension depressive disorder drug. So that's what they have won an approval for. Now, if you look at this drug, it's the generic version of Wellbutrin XL tablets, which is being manufactured by one of the leading pharmaceutical companies. The total size, as far as this drug is concerned, on an annual basis in US is close to $750 million. That's the size that this has. But this has a lot of players. So not that, a significant chunk is going to come in to Lupin. It comes in as a surprise. It was not a part of the estimates, but it's not a big drug either. The second, one mid-cap pharma company that will be in focus will be Newland Labs. Now, they have one of their facility in Hyderabad, which is one of their biggest facility. That has been inspected, or the unit 1 of that facility has been inspected by US FDA in the last few days. When they came out of that inspection, they gave them a Form 483, which is a normal process. But in that Form 483, there were 2 observations. Now, one is procedural in nature. The second is about quality management. Again, we don't have the details of these observations. This is something which the management has said and not clarified as to how big this could be in terms of any impact. But this is a significant development as far as their facility is concerned. Let's see how the stock reacts. Recently, it has done well. So maybe, there is some amount of profit booking in this, but we need the details of those 2 observations before any conclusion can be made. As of now, there is no particular detail as far as those 2 observations are concerned. Subra, let's talk about DV's lab. We spoke about the news. It can be positive or can have a positive bias today. What's the level to watch out for?
Well, Pankaj, definitely risk-reward merits, I think, some sort of bottom fishing in this counter, because if the long-term charts are taken into consideration, I think closer to levels of 600, we have seen some very huge support. I mean, we've seen a literal collapse in the last, I think, 8-10 months. So from that point, I think one could possibly maybe put a strict stop loss of 600 and play for the upside.
Play for the upside. So what are the levels on the upside? It's likely to open around 650. What will be the next level?
Yeah, the next level that possibly could be seen is around 675, and after that, I think levels of 725 could be seen.
Right. Siddharth, fundamentally, when one of the biggest plant gets import alert, now they are starting to get exemption. So they got 10 products exemption earlier. They are now getting 2 other products where they have significant market share. Does it come in as a positive, or the resolution of import alert will be the key for re-rating?
Well, both are important, and which is more impactful is really important to see. But if you are the biggest plant, biggest unit of your entire facilities is under the observation, and if it is a serious threat, maybe a data integrity issue, then I think that is much bigger problem than any approval. I think one investor should look at the observations getting cleared and how company resolves it with US FDA. That holds more importance than any approval getting by the company in terms of drugs or supplies or anything else.
Right. SV, CESE has a press conference today at 12:30. That's the Sanjeev Goenka Group company. The expectation are that there may be some announcement regarding demerger of any of their existing business, especially Spencer, which is their retail arm. Would it be positive if they actually do that?
I think so. I think what then happens is, because India also slowly is coming around to the view of conglomerate discounts. So anything which kind of cleans up the businesses is always good, because typically what happens, Pankaj, in conglomerates, it's the promoters. The general feeling is that promoters use this as an opportunity to increase their stake in the company. It may not necessarily be that friendly, shareholder friendly for non-promoter shareholders. So in that sense, I think as long as the ratios work out fine, I think this is a good move and a move that one should closely look out for.
Right. In terms of restructuring, could it also be looked as one of the precursor to sell something? So they may be looking for a strategic stake sale in one of their businesses. It's a big conglomerate group. So that is something also which markets would read into?
I think it will be a little early to say, because I don't track this counter that much. So whatever I say is more based upon one's own experience. I don't think this group is really cash strapped. So there's no real reason for them to do this, because they've got Spencer pretty cheap. It was bought by the redoubtable RPG. I was told that he bought it over a flight from the then Parsi owner of the business. So they got it pretty cheap, and let's face it, retail, both the businesses are good business. One is a defensive business, the other is a future business.
I'll just come to you. Markets have opened 27 points higher. So again, it's not opened at the 9200 level, which SGX was indicating, but it's opened above the first pivot level, and it's going towards the first resistance. So it's a good opening considering what was expected. Aurobindo Pharma on your screen is up 5 rupees. HDFC is down about 6 rupees or so. Asian Paints is down 5 rupees. Hero MotoCorp absolutely flat. Grasim is up 5 rupees, but just 700 shares traded. So I think it's still opening. Cipla is up about a rupee or so, and Hero MotoCorp is down 3 rupees. Eicher Motors is down 18, but it's really no change considering the price. Idea Cellular is up 50 paisa or close to 7.7%, and Axis Bank is flat with a negative bias. SBI is absolutely flat, 289, not much to read into it now. Bank of Baroda was one of the top losers on Friday, but it's today among the gainers. IOC continues to move up. Remember, it was a top gainer on Friday as well. There was a big call that came in from Morgan Stanley. This is followed by BPCL. Second day in a row, BPCL is also doing extremely well. These names have done well on Friday. There are some expectation that Q4 may be a problem, but markets have given it that price. L&T, there is some news flow regarding the change at the top. Apart from that, overall, in the last week, L&T was one of the key nifty contributors which took it higher. So there has been some optimism going into this result season. HDFC Limited is down about is down close to 1%, about 14 rupees. Nothing in terms of news flow, but very good volumes of 67,000 shares considering it's just a minute of trading session. Indiabull Housing Finance is down about 5 rupees or so, 27,000 shares traded, 950 for Indiabull Housing. Lupin is down 7 rupees. Don't really think it's reacting to that news flow. Also, there are some newspaper reports suggest that one of the plants in Aurangabad for Lupin, which is about 10% of their sales, there is an inspection going on. Again, it's not a concluded inspection. There is no result outcome which is there. So it's just an inspection, which is a normal course of business for these companies. Wipro is absolutely flat. Bajaj Auto is up about 18 rupees. HCL Tech is up close to 7 rupees. Dr. Reddy's is on the flattish side. Divi's Lab has opened higher. It's up about 3.7%, 645 for Divi's Lab, 644 as we speak. 5.5 lakh shares traded, so very good volume. Bhushan Steel has submitted a plan for their debt recast. It's up 6.7%. Welspun India is up about 5.6. It's a company where Credit Suisse has initiated coverage. It's up about 5.3, 5.4 odd percent. Kolte Patil is up 4%. No news flow again that I can pick up on this news, but real estate as a pack has done well. Maybe that's why this name is going up. It's up around 4% at this point of time. 62,000 shares traded as far as this name is concerned. Shobha, there is a disclosure that promoters have reduced stake. They have sold about 40 lakh shares. So 11 rupees decline for Shobha Developers, or rather now Shobha Limited. It was earlier known as Shobha Developers. Now it's Shobha Limited. 11 to 12 rupees on the lower side. Religare, you can see, is up about 3.5, 4 odd percent. They have sold one of their insurance businesses. Maybe that's why it's on the lower side. They have sold one of their businesses, and that's why, it's on the higher side. It's up close to 3.5 odd percent. Newland Lab is also a name which is down. It's down about 50 to 60 odd rupees. So that name has done well. There is some negative news flow. However, the news flow is incomplete at this point of time. We need some more details. So that's also a name which is in focus right now. Moil on your screen is up 2%, 332. Future Consumer is up 2%. Eros Media is up 2%. SL Propack is up 2%. JM Financial is looking strong, and Reddington India. However, volumes on Reddington is low. It's just 11,000 shares right now. So we'll wait for that to pick up. Dena Bank is up 1.7%. That's Adani Port, one of the picks of our top guest. Adani Power is also up 2%. So that entire group seems to be in focus. Magma FinCorp is up 1.3. NLC India is up close to about 1%. Overall, mid caps have also started on a positive note. Anisha, any other names that you can pick up, especially with good volumes?
NIT, Pankaj, that stock is down 10% now. So we've heard the CEO resigning, but that stock is down 8.5%. So that one is seeing a negative tick, and the volumes are also higher than normal. But that is the only one, and you've, in any case, covered a lot of ground. Subra, what do you make of the kind of moves you're seeing in some of the housing finance companies? A stock like LIC Housing Finance is now at a year high, 625 plus levels. What would you do with this stock? What's your strategy here?
Well, Anish, I think broadly one has to be a bit cautious going by the run-up that we have seen many of the housing finance companies. So I would probably look to maybe, yes, on the charts we don't have any indications as to any weakness coming about. But one would be better off maybe booking part profits at current levels and then wait with probably some stop losses. I think this broadly applies to almost all the housing finance companies.
All right, so a little cautious there. Mr. Prasad, have you had a look at Havells? Havells has had a very good run. On Friday, we saw a good performance from Havells. It's also nearly at a year high. We've seen some of the AC companies see a lot of interest and a lot of buzz. What do you make of the move seeing in Havells? Do you think it's good for more?
Yeah, the only thing is that, again, these are kind of some of the names. What one would suggest is that it's always good to book some profits, because typically what happens is that when markets move sideways, forget even move a little down, typically the mid cap and the small cap names. I'm not for a moment talking anything about the management of Havells. I think they've done a very good job. They tend to, just as they move more than faster than the rest of the market, they also move down faster than the market. So I think these names and housing finance, what Subra just mentioned, I agree with what he's saying. It's always good to take some profit off the table, because at the end of the day, share price is a mythical profit till you book it. So I think it's always good to book some profits off the table.
Right. Siddharth, have you had a look at NIT Tech? You said you don't have coverage going on the large technology shares. Any view on NIT Tech? It seems to be coming into resistance areas. The entire technology space is underperformed. Do you think it could be different for some of the mid-cap technology stocks?
Of course, it's a correct time to pick up some of the mid-cap technology stocks at the current juncture. But I think the horizon has to be a long horizon, like 2 years horizon, because of a gestation period is now large. On top of it, if you look at the mid-cap companies, there is a lot of volatility in terms of earnings are concerned. In terms of mid-cap IT space, what we like is persistent system. We believe that the IoT tie-up with IBM, I think that is reaping fruits for the company. I think in the digital space, they may see good growth coming up. With a 2 year horizon, we believe persistent system can be a good performer. In the product space, we like Majesco. In the insurance business, we believe there is a lot of traction coming on. There is a lot of companies which is expanding. So I would say in the product space, Majesco also looks very interesting with a long-term horizon.
Majesco and persistence, two mid-cap stocks that Siddharth likes. Subra, you said you're cautious about the housing finance companies. Have you had a look at Bajaj Finance? It's seen a stupendous run since it slumped in December. What are you seeing on this stock?
Well, of course, this has been one, has had a roller coaster ride, and it saw some correction post the demonetization, but subsequently has recovered remarkably. And I think we could probably still see some upside coming about in the counter, because this and also Bajaj Finserv, I think both of them are still looking pretty strong. And probably one could hold on to these stocks. And one more stock which I would like to add, where I think one in terms of a relative merit, probably one could hold on that, probably a Canfin Homes, which has also been a relative outperformer in the entire segment. But broadly, I would be a bit cautious, and going ahead, we might see some choppiness coming about in the sector.
Right. Just wanted to highlight Avenue Supermarkets and the entire retail sector. So Avenue Supermarkets was up some 13% on Friday. It's up another 4% right now. So that's the top retail company right now in terms of market cap, in terms of the performance. So that's taking the entire sector also higher along with them. That's Avenue Supermarkets up 4.5%. Let's also look at some other names. What's happening with Future Retail? What's happening with some of the other names? Avenue Supermarket volumes are 2.10 million shares, but of course it's just a recently traded counter. That's why looking at the average would not be absolutely correct at this point of time. 779, 778. So it's done well. It went to the highs of 800. It's now seeing some sort of profit booking at this point of time, but it's a name which has done extremely well. That's a name which is doing good right now. 782 volumes of 2.2 million shares. On Friday, you had a development when JP Morgan initiated coverage, but they initiated with a neutral rating. So that's what they did. And now, after that, you've seen a 15 to 16% sort of a surge. SV, any call on Avenue Supermarkets? Have you looked at the details? It's an expensive stock, but you think that it's a good stock to own?
I think it's pretty expensive, Pankaj. And typically what happens is the minute some of the foreign brokerage houses say that they're going to cover, then the smart players on the street then take a position. And that's what is happening in this stock. I would frankly look at other names because it's a good company, good visibility in earnings, but the valuations are way too high. At the end of the day, what kind of margins are we talking about in this business? You know, it's not a business where there's a huge amount of value add. It's more how you run the business. So I would tend to wait for some correction, if at all, to happen before one plunges in.
But you know, if the company is owned by such a market veteran, there has been a history of 12 years. Don't you think the company deserves a PE of 60? There are a lot of companies which have always proved themselves and, you know, have got PEs of 45, 50, 60 and have traded at that valuation when the growth is high. For example, Titan, it's always traded at very high valuations and the valuations never came off. Even the numbers were slightly lower sometimes.
Pankaj, if you go back in history and look at the valuation of HLL and Procter & Gamble and some of these big names or ACC or Century Mills, and what are the valuations today? Even the HLLs and the P&Gs, the kind of valuation they had. So one should be cautious. I think what we need to understand is when you talk of 60 time price earnings ratio, that means the investor is willing to wait. Okay, you build in a PEG ratio, is willing to wait 50 to 60 years to recover his or her money. Now that means you're only playing on appreciation game. I think one needs to be careful. This is typically a bull market syndrome when we try to sort of justify high valuations. I mean, I'm not denying what you're saying. So I would always tread with caution because there are good names which are going at half, if not 1/4, the same kind of P ratios, maybe in different industry. So I would much rather look at those names rather than look at names with such high P ratio. You know.
Right. Let's talk about the other sector that you like. So IOC is up. It's up about 2% right now. BPCL is also up close to 2%. And HPCL is also doing well. Q4 numbers are expected to be muted. You look at any estimates, volume growth is expected to be lower. Plus the one-time inventory gains that was expected to be there would now, become lost. So it would slightly be volatile in terms of numbers. What do you think markets are betting on?
See, one is the fact that this whole subsidy element is going out. Once a subsidy element goes out, the finances of these companies are much better. Second is the fact that all of them, all the three majors are going into downstream. BPCL is setting up one in Kochi, IOC is doing it in Paradeep, and HPCL is going to do it anytime in the East Coast. So I think like any good global oil player, they are going to be right from E&P right up to the end product. So I think this is what markets are expecting on and quality businesses, they've got a quality franchise and I guess that's why markets feel that these are good businesses. They're good defensive stock. These are not stocks where you will see huge run-ups like you will see in an IT name, especially a tech name when the markets are going through that fever. But otherwise, good solid names to have as part of your portfolio.
Right. In terms of oil marketing companies, can you do an analysis to compare it with regional players? Morgan Stanley has done it in its recent report and it's looking 30% cheaper than some of the globally listed oil marketing companies.
Well, you are only, giving another reason why one should be invested in these stocks. Because most of them are India players. And even today, per capita consumption of any and every oil downstream product in India is definitely lower than some of the fast-growing economies. So if you look at US at a comparable time or Europe or indeed China, therefore, given all these factors, I think that's why FIs and others are willing to take a bet. And don't forget that government still has a large holding. So that comes as a big support as far as all these stocks are concerned.
Right. Siddharth, in terms of L&T, what will be your call? Now, of course, there is a news flow regarding the management change. It was expected that Mr. Nayak is going and somebody else would be replaced. But do you think that the recent surge in L&T has got to do with numbers and what is expected in FY18 rather than change in management?
See, of course, because with a long-term perspective, fundamental always works out, and in the shorter term, it's always sentiment. So management change, I think the predecessor was also managing the company well, and I think the new coming management is also seems to be part of the system. So of course expectations are also too high. But talking on the fundamentals of L&T, I think order book can swell going forward. On top of it, if you look at 30% of the revenue comes from the Middle East side, and because of crude inching up towards $50 from whatever we've seen 6 months back, I think the Middle East also some kind of execution is also coming in place, which is again positive for L&T. Of course, L&T being the proxy to the economy, seems very attractive. But any investment coming in L&T should be having a horizon of 2 years and above. It's just because of a lot of public spending is coming in place, but I think private capex is still not coming in place. So for that traction to come in and L&T to perform, I think it will take another 2 to 3 years.
Right. In terms of L&T or in terms of valuation at which L&T is trading, assuming that the growth which market is expecting from FY18, it is still one of the cheapest stock in Nifty 50 after the recent run-up?
Of course, it's an infrastructure play, so infrastructure doesn't get much higher valuations in terms of if you compare it with some of the consumption part of the story. So valuation-wise, it is cheap. But if one has to look at the cheapness of the valuation is because of the reason and the pedigree of the sector altogether. So of course, it's a high gestation business. Still, a lot of things are in place by the new government in place. But still, land acquisition, so on and so forth, and many other issues are creeping in infrastructure space. And L&T being a behemoth, I think it will take time to revive the entire story and to participate and give the performance as it was in the years of 2005 to 2007. Of course, it's a good bet to be in, but the gestation should be higher.
Right. Subra, you've been looking at Bharti Infratel for some time. It's up 2%. It was up 5% last week as well. Do you think it can continue to outperform?
Well, the fact that now it is trying to consolidate above levels of those to 335, which breached very decisively, that's a comforting level, and there seems to be some appetite buying coming about in that particular stock. But again, closer to levels of maybe 370, 381 could look to book some profits. It's shown some lot of volatility the last 5-6 months. So I think yes, it's showing remarkable strength. I think, but closer to levels of 370, 371 has to be cautious.
Right, but till 371, do you think the rally would continue?
I would think so.
Right. What will be your call on India Bull Housing? That's among the top losers in the Nifty pack today. Doesn't generally go down, but today it's going down and going down with good volume so far.
Well, this has actually seen some pretty steep run-up, ever since it was included in the Nifty pack. I think this along with IOC. And subsequently, we have seen this sort of correction coming about. But again, a very high pedigree stock, a very decent dividend track record as well. So maybe it could, as I have already mentioned, the housing finance companies look a bit, topish. So I think some decent correction up to levels of maybe 900, then I think the buying appetite will again come. But broadly a stock which should be on the top of the list.
Right. Do you track RBL Bank? It's of course not an FNO right now, but do you track that name? Are you surprised by the recent move? It's today also up 3.5%.
Well, we don't track the bank as such, but definitely, it has seen some very steady rise ever since the listing took place 6 months back, and we have seen that every time it dips to maybe about 5 to 6%, we see the buying coming about. But yeah, I would tend to believe that the appetite is still very strong, and probably we could see some more gains coming about in the coming months.
Right. SP, RBL Bank, now do you think valuations for this bank are sector leading versus names like Yes Bank and IndusInd?
Yeah, I see what typically happens is when a new bank gets listed, Pankaj, and given again, it's also a question of the floating stock syndrome. There is always a flavor of the month kind of thing. And let's face it, the management which went from, Vishwi Rahuja-led management has done a very good job. So given that background, people are expecting the kind of dynamism that has been seen in names like Yes Bank, etc. So I guess that's why the street is favoring this name. One has to be cautious. As you rightly said, valuations again are very rich. So one has to be cautious in that sense.
Right. SP, thank you so much for taking out time for us. Subramaniam, always a pleasure to talk to you. And Siddharth, thank you so much. Just before we go, gentlemen, SP, let's start with you. Any disclosures?
Basically, I've not really increased any personal holding. It's State Bank of India, Hindustan Petroleum, I think HPCL. I think these are the two names that I mentioned when we spoke. None of the other names other names I mentioned, I have a holding.
Siddharth, disclosures for you?
I personally do not hold any of the stock which I have discussed, but my client and organization must be holding. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Subramaniam, disclosures for you?
Well, broadly the views are the same as we have discussed. Personally, I have no holdings.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out time for us.